Here are 7 ways capitalism is inherently anti-Christian. Number 1, it encourages the hoarding of wealth. Being against wealth hoarding is something that Jesus expresses throughout his entire ministry. From Matthew 19:24, where Jesus says, "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven," to him explicitly telling his followers to give up everything they own. Jesus' teachings are fundamentally about self-sacrifice, especially the sacrifice of material wealth, which Jesus seems to think keeps people from spiritual enlightenment. Throughout the Gospels and the Epistles, the early Christian sentiment is that if you are rich, you have gotten your reward here on earth, that you have chosen material wealth over the well-being of others, and so you will not receive that reward in the afterlife. A theme throughout the Gospels is inversion. Jesus is the inversion of a wealthy emperor, and he teaches that those who are first in this life, those who are wealthiest and the most privileged, will be the poorest and the least privileged in the next life. Number 2, it discourages a Sabbath day. God gave us a Sabbath day so that we could rest. And according to the Bible, as well as a great deal of Jewish and Christian scholars, the Sabbath day is a day where you're supposed to do pretty much nothing, with the exception of things that are necessary to preserve life. For example, if you see someone who's gotten in a car crash, obviously you should go help them, even if it's the Sabbath. If you see a person who is hungry, it is okay to cook them a meal on the Sabbath. But outside of that, we are supposed to chill. Capitalism requires that we work 2, sometimes 3 jobs. It requires overtime. And if we do get a day off, it requires we do things like laundry and car maintenance on our Sabbath day, a day that is specifically set aside for us to chill. As Walter from The Big Lebowski says, you don't roll on Shabbos. Part 3, it doesn't make time for prayer or contemplation. Having a healthy spiritual life requires a certain degree of silence, of quiet, of time where you're not running, you're not working. It requires breaks throughout the day where you can stop and thank God for your blessings. Capitalism doesn't want you to take breaks. It wants you to keep working. It wants to treat you like a machine instead of a temple of God's creation and a vessel of God's love. Now, this doesn't mean that hard work isn't important. It absolutely is. Without labor, nothing prospers. But human beings are not machines. We aren't robots. We need time for rest, for quiet time with God. Whether that's in a church, in your home, in the forest. I know a lot of men who are like, man, I wish I could go fishing more. And that's because I know a lot of men who feel closest to God when they're fishing. It's a time of quiet contemplation. We need those simple moments with God. And that's something capitalism does not want us to have. Number 4, it exploits the poor and needy. Capitalism is built on exploitation. You cannot maintain the system without it. It is built on low-wage work, or slavery, or prison labor, which is kind of a form of slavery in and of itself at this point. It breaks the bodies of its workers while paying them unfairly and not providing for them if they get hurt. This is something that's talked about by the Apostle James. In James 5, the Apostle states, "Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you." Jesus, his followers, and many of the prophets are very clear on their views on labor exploitation. A system that is reliant on labor exploitation is inherently anti-Christ. Number 5, it is idolatrous. Have you ever heard the phrase, "greed is good," from the movie Wall Street? Well, that's kind of the phrase capitalism is built on. In order to be a capitalist, you have to think greed is good. You have to make money and wealth into your God, and you cannot serve 2 masters. Any man whose primary motivation is lining his own pockets is not a man who can follow God. God wants us to sacrifice our wealth. Early Christians even believed that if you owned 2 shirts and there was a man with none, you were committing theft. And if they thought that was theft, think of what they would think of people who have billions of dollars, especially billions of dollars of unearned money. Money they got from stocks, from exploiting the labor of others. That is not earned wealth generated by one's hard work. It is wealth that is stolen from the pockets of workers. Guys like Elon Musk, guys like Vivek Ramaswamy, they didn't earn their money. Elon started out with wealth from his parents, who obtained that money from emerald mines in apartheid South Africa. He then invested that money in the ideas of actually smart people who actually invented things. That is how he made his money. Vivek Ramaswamy, he made his money from a pump and dump scheme. It was literally just theft. Elon, Vivek, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, these are men who've made money their god. And because of that, they cannot hold the love of Christ in their heart. Number 6, it leads to empire. Capitalism leads to wealth hoarding, and wealth hoarding leads to empire. And God makes it very, very clear how he feels about empire. Sodom and Gomorrah, Babylon, Rome. These are all empires that were struck down by God. Empire cannot sustain itself. They always fall. God does not like empire. And when an empire falls, it tends to fall very hard. Empire is the height of human hubris. It leads to arrogance. It leads to inequality. It leads to a lack of care for others. Ezekiel 16:49 states, "This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy." Prosperity means nothing if we are not using it to care for other people. Number 7, it causes us to be bad stewards of creation. When God created the earth, man was endowed with the responsibility to maintain it. That means caring for creation, caring for the natural world, caring for our environment, caring about plants and animals, about clean air and water. And this is a responsibility that we have neglected. Capitalism has destroyed God's creation. It has destroyed our natural world. We have taken this beautiful piece of art that God has given us, with all the things on it we could ever need, and we have destroyed it, we have polluted it, and we have done so that a few rich men can make even more money. And I know that a lot of Christians, especially ones on the conservative side, y'all are going to be like, oh, I don't care about the planet. Oh, hippy-dippy environmentalist nonsense. But as I've stated previously, a lot of y'all like to hunt and fish. A lot of y'all do enjoy that time in nature. And so it is important that we preserve it.